Alright, so this is the 2019 Modern Market Omnium Day 2 Cat 5 men and women's race. Field today is 31 men, 2 women. We're getting our quarter lap lead out from the McLaren again today. They also got a Nissan GTR out there. These guys get some free lap time on a closed course as the sort of the trade-off for being our lead-out cars for the day. It's a good deal for them. You'll see in a second he'll honk the horn a few times, flip the paddle, and take off, and that's the official start of the race. So right here we're entering the back stretch. There is a fairly substantial headwind all the way down this stretch of the course. Pretty similar to yesterday in the fact that the straight downhill back stretch is also very windy. So normally I wouldn't be sitting second wheel right at the beginning of the race for no apparent reason, but you know, when I'm barely breaking 100 watts as we're going 28, 27 miles an hour downhill, it's not really too much of a penalty for not enough draft, so everyone's taking it pretty chill so far. Still basically warming up. I mean, 130 beats a minute is zone 2. As you come around that corner, that's where you get most of the elevation. So this is a 1.3 mile course with about 45 feet of gain per lap, so it's twice the length of yesterday's course with 1/3 of the elevation gain. No hairpins, nothing technical about this course, beautiful pavement, no tar strips or anything to worry about. Just enough corners to keep it from being boring. Yeah, lap 1 done. We're still taking it pretty chill. Everyone's just getting a feel for it. They didn't really give us much of a chance for a warm-up lap on the track because of the guys of the cars were getting most of the spare time. This rider seemed to be frustrated, wanting me to jump back on in second wheel position, and I kind of let the gap open up and flagged him into it because I don't need to be sitting that close to the front. This guy just takes a flyer, not sure why. He's about to be headed into the headwind section. Terrible place to make an attack. But I started to jump on his wheel, but out of the looking over to the side, I could see all these guys coming and let them do most of the work for me. I mean, I'm sitting at 0 watts and still passing. You can hear on the mic, you know, the wind. You can see on everyone's jerseys, like it's pretty windy back here. You're not gonna do well sitting on the front or going off on an attack here. I'm a little heavier than a lot of these riders. It was about 185 pounds for this race, so running deep section wheels, being a little bit heavier, you'll see in that area quite often I'm not putting out very much wattage to stay on wheels. A lot of the times I'm coasting. Heart rate's gotten up into a normal race effort zone. 150. I think I averaged about 148, 149 for this race. Topping out at 164 at some point.
Come down, and the guys looking over their shoulders at each other on the front.
Some other small attacks going, but it's early on. With that headwind on the back stretch, I'm just really not particularly worried about solo efforts. Also in Cat5, I'm not particularly worried about two guys being up the road. The chances of them working together well enough to stay away from us is unlikely. I'm still sitting a bit closer to the front than I typically would, but as long as I can stay in somebody's wheels and keep the effort in the low 200s, you know, it's not a bad place to be. And being in the wind back here, it's not really something I'm interested in doing, so basically just waiting for people to come around me, get on some other wheels. Not much of a draft to be had off number 127 there. He's a pretty little guy. So yeah, I sat out in the wind a little bit longer than I would have liked to there, but no one was too interested in letting me slot in. Not that I blame them. And it's coming around the corner, going back uphill. This is the best place to put in any effort that you're going to put in on this course. See a 200 meter to the finish line sign.
With the pellets and specialized cycling team.
There's yesterday's winner on the right-hand side on the orange specialized. So through this section, wind is starting to come crosswind. Best place to be is over on the right-hand side. I'm just kind of in the middle, so I'm still pretty well protected, but ideally, you'd be over on the other side of that white line. Having the wind blocked by people in my position at the current time. But as we roll around the corner, it comes almost full-on headwind. You just need to be tucked as low as you can and on somebody's wheel. We've got somebody off the front. Actually must put in a decent amount of effort to be that far off, but as I've already stated, I'm not particularly worried, especially with this far to go in this race, about anyone making a solo attempt off the front. The headwind section through here is strong enough that you can see he's already getting pulled back. It's just not a good place to be off by yourself. We're pulling him back. I'm sitting at 144 beats a minute. That was one of the easier laps, and we're still pulling back somebody who is trying to make a solo attack.
Lot smoother. That's okay. We made that decision. We need more to get out of it. Yeah. I mean, he's already given up, but not hard enough. He should just fucking drop it to like 100 watts.
Continuously pile down the pressure through the finish area.
Looks like he's racing for a breathe. I know. Who really had him?
There is still a rider off the front, if you can make that out. But again, likely to be pulled back rather quickly.
Didn't work out it.
Section near the start-finish, being flat with a tailwind, pretty smooth corners. You can open up a decent gap, but the work you're gonna have to put in on this backside is gonna be enough to cancel most of that out. But again, letting other guys try to cover the attack pulls up the gap for me. Just sit on wheels, 0 watts. I could probably do well to ease into my efforts a little more. It's probably pushing a little more than I need to be jumping up to 700 watts for a second, but hard to say whether I could lighten that effort at all and still be effective. It's hard to say. Very different from yesterday's race, even though the majority of the field is the same guys. Just a very different course. No lap traffic to worry about, no hairpins. There was no wrecks in this race, as I would have hoped. Honestly, there was fairly few sketchy movements even. It was a pretty tame race.
Yeah. It's not hurt. It's not hurt.
This is about halfway point.
go, riders. 5 to go. So base your hex now.
That was the 5 to go call out as we went through this start-finish area. There's a moto up there. There's no one off the front. I'm sure we've dropped a few riders at this point, but we have a pretty large group that is still the lead group. I imagine it's partly that everyone's feeling a little bit of a fatigue from yesterday combined with that headwind back straight that kind of deters people from attacking. That said, there goes another attack right there off the front. I'm just gonna follow wheels of anyone who tries to cover it. Again, being a little bit heavier, 0 watts I'm passing people in the headwind section, but jumping back in behind wheels. Doing 30 through here. This kid puts in a good big effort, so I jump on his wheel. Having to hold 700 for a while, but definitely better than closing it on my own. I'm pulling a good number of guys up with me right now, but I'm not putting in too much of an effort. A little bit of an attack on the inside there to try to make sure they get up to the front. I think that might have been a lap rider. Dropping back. And my heart rate is up to 160. We are having to put in a decent effort there to cover that attack, but now I'm basically accidentally off the front. Put a little more effort in going down the hill than I needed to and coasted past everyone. Right there, you can hear the wind on the mic. You know, I'm sheltering in the ideal spot. The wind is coming across. Getting some recovery back down to 150, 149. Things were doing 22 miles an hour. I think we were doing 19 on the around the first corner there. That was everyone's kind of backing off, recovering. People thinking about making their next attack. Again, 0 watts, coasting past people. This rider's probably 130 pounds. we got a rider off the front putting in an effort. That is the appropriate place to attack if you were going to, in my opinion. He's stretching out a little bit of a gap there. A few seconds up on us. Still a few laps to go. And unlike yesterday, today we are all aware that he's off the front without all the confusion of lap traffic and missing motos. So those of us on the front who were watching him off the front know that we'll have to close up that gap before the finish. Actually let him get out there pretty far. It's probably a 6-second gap. I'm sitting in 6th wheel at this point. We're about 22 minutes into the race. 30-minute race today. So we still probably got a good 6-7 second gap going into this headwind section. You'll see how quickly it probably gets shut down. We're sitting at 27, 28 miles an hour. Tack on headwind, and that's a lot of watts. Whereas I'm sitting back here in recovery mode, zone 2 again, 132 beats a minute. Just waiting for riders like this that want to put an effort in, see if they can close down the gap some as he goes up the hill. I don't get much of a draft off him, but he's also not going that hard. Had I not been so well recovered, that probably would have felt like a much harder effort than it did at the time, but after sitting at 400 watts for a few seconds, it's still only up to 147 beats a minute. Kind of looks like we're just noodling along, but we are sitting at 200 and 300 watts, riding across the top there. Gap is closed down. He's appears to be getting a little worn out after one lap on his own. He's sitting up, looking back. He knows we're coming, so he's trying not to go any harder than he has to not get swarmed. Again, sitting in the inside, sheltered, not even feeling 100 watts through here. I could have easily had a comfortable time of taking a drink on the day's course, but for a 30-minute race, I still didn't bother to put on a bottle cage. It's not too often that a 30-minute crit race is going to be boring enough that there's nothing to be paying attention to. And I'm certainly not going to get dehydrated in 30 minutes, so less weight, more aero, one less thing to think about. This guy puts in a good dig going up the hill. Closes down that gap. The rate we're going, we're gonna slingshot right past him, no problem. Holding 400 and 500 watts. A little bit longer than I would have liked to there. There are other riders around me, as you can see off to the right. We're not on any kind of a breakaway or anything, just being out front, ready to cover attacks like this. Holding 750, 500. Decent effort to stay on with this lead group. Back up to almost 700. The previous laps through here we would have been doing 19 miles an hour, you know, maybe 22 miles an hour through here as we were noodling along, but not this lap. A couple of riders got shelled out of that attack. I'm out front now. Well, on my own, having to close down this gap. And now we're coming into the headwind of the back stretch, so looks like I'm taking it pretty easy, waiting for somebody else's wheel to come around. Because I know I don't want to try to close this gap. And sure enough, there's a couple of wheels to follow. Still have to jump up to 700 watts to get attached, but then I'm back in recovery mode. And the brakes for a second there even. Just so much wind once you're out there. I'm doing 0 watts, still coasting past. Heart rate's coming down. At this point, I'm not very confident that we're going to make the lead pack, but this pedal rider comes along and starts putting in a big dig, so I decide to jump on his wheel and see where it goes. I'm putting out 600 watts here, sitting on his wheel, so he's not a small rider. He's putting out even more watts than me, but he manages to claw us right back up to the back of the group. I'm sitting at 159 beats a minute. We're coming up on the 200 meter to go sprint sign. That attack is, you know, there's no chance I'm covering that, but 200 to go. I'm putting in everything I've got. This kid comes around me, and I'm pretty much fried, so we're just about coasting to the finish line. That's 6th place for me.